Hello and welcome to the EMS Improv Podcast, where we engage, where we're mindful, we share, tell our stories. I'm Eric Chase and we're powered by GEMS. Ladies and gentlemen, this is my second recording after hiatus and I'm just grateful for my guest. This guest is going to bring a history of 40 years of fire and EMS service. He's going to bring a story about sustainability in a way of EMS models and what we're doing here in Oklahoma and what I think can be replicated across the country. And also a life sustainability story, one where when he gets into this, you're going to hear the human impact and what really matters and how we serve our citizens and how we serve our community is how this person's been serving for 40 years, how he leads as a leader, and the things that he's going to do while he still has this opportunity on this earth. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest is Edward Fowler. He is the City of El Reno Emergency Manager. And he started with one of his cohorts and compatriots, the City of El Reno EMS, within the last several months. So Ed Fowler, welcome. So tell me about the literally and glad to be here, because I know you are glad to be here to tell your story about the City of El Reno EMS. You also have a more significant personal story, and I'm not sure which one you want to cover first. So I'm going to give you the latitude to go there and kind of how we met and how this comes to fruition.
I guess we could start with the EMS side because that's kind of where what got us sitting across from one another. The city of El Reno, for a number of years, was covered by a private, and the city's growing. It's for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's considered part of the Oklahoma City metropolitan area. It is the far western suburban city of that metropolitan area. A lot of rural, a lot of city. We're growing. We just annexed 23 square miles, so that puts us about 112 square miles. So a lot of room to grow, and it's happening right before our eyes. So it's been almost 2 years now. The city just kind of started thinking what the future looked like in a lot of different areas, and EMS wound up being one of those areas. It's not that they really had any issue with the private provider that they had. They just, kind of wanted to see what else might be an option. I was actually living in Arizona at the time. Kind of thought my days of EMS and anything having to do with that were kind of behind me. I got a phone call and we started kind of bouncing some ideas, myself and the city leaders, and after a lot of hard work and a lot of cussing and discussing, it was decided to bring the EMS service in-house and make it a third city service.
With all of that, and you mentioned future is so important, and so many of us get so far ahead of where we are and not necessarily are as present in each day as we would like, whether you have things to do, whether you have people to see, people to tend to, because as the emergency management director, you have kind of responsibilities for every organization in the public safety realm within the city. By being present, and we'll get into the EMS side here in a second, what are some of the responsibilities that you have to ensure the future and the present and joining them together in your role?
It's an interesting role in that, you hit it right on the head. EMS is certainly a part of it. And with bringing the EMS service in-house just recently, that's been a big focus of mine. But at the end of the day, emergency preparedness is really a big part of emergency management. Obviously we can't predict big events. That being said, El Reno is notorious for tornadoes. I've actually been involved in one of those myself several years back, and you can only prepare, you can't predict, and so part of my role is to have the city as prepared as possible. Preparation is a big thing. It's all great and wonderful when the alarm goes off and the sirens are blaring and everybody's getting ready. Well, how are we going to handle that? And that a lot of that falls on me. We have floods in El Reno. planning for that. We have a major interstate that runs through that is notorious for major accidents. So it's all encompassing, really, kind of my role. Um, the city's never had an actual full-time emergency manager. It always fell on the fire chief. And so they've been very helpful to me just in what they already had in place, and then taking that and building on it. It's been a challenge, but it's fun. It made being a part of fun again for me, and that's always been important to me. Is that I'm enjoying what I'm doing.
Hey Ed, with the questions about sustainability and EMS in crisis or desert areas of EMS where there's no longer a provider being able to serve their communities, I want you to talk a little bit more about sustainability in how maybe you've brought collaboration to that, where maybe your experiences or things like that have led you to the model that the city of El Reno uh, has attempted to implement, excuse me, and has implemented.
Nationwide, I'm not going to call it necessarily an EMS crisis, but there are significant issues facing EMS, nationwide. It's not an Oklahoma thing. It's not a Texas thing. It's nationwide. And yeah, I think cities that, our size, bigger, smaller, any size city that has been dealing with private EMS, you know, those individuals in the private, sector, um, I think they're seeing the bigger impact. I could be wrong, but I think, they're in business to make money. And if they don't survive, right? What I kind of approached the city with as we got to speaking on this was, would it be nice to make a profit? Absolutely. I mean, nobody wants to get out of bed in the morning, I don't think, without thinking of how they're going to better themselves. Well, that's what the city was just looking at doing was, is there a better way of doing things? Do we necessarily need to make a profit, or do we need to break even? And I think from the start, it was, this is going to be sustainable. We do have the tax base. We do have the room for the growth. We started smart. We didn't just throw a ton of people and a ton of ambulances at the situation. We started realistically, if you will. We learned very early on that we were going to need to increase staffing and add in an ambulance, within 60 days of startup, which was July 1st was startup. Um, so now we're running the three trucks. But what I'm seeing is and also by going with the third city service idea is that it is sustainable. Um, One of the things that I've really kind of preached about is when a city decides to take on 911 the EMS service is, well, let's put it in the fire department. And not saying every city does that, but if you stop and think about it, that is generally the trend is, well, the private's leaving, or whatever the case is going on, we'll just put it in the fire department. Um, Temporary fix, sure, great, you got to do what you got to do to put ambulances on the street. But coming from both sides of the fence, coming from the fire side and the EMS side, um, I became a firefighter because I wanted to fight fires. Now, I knew that 80% of what I was going to do my very first day on the job was I was going to run EMS calls. Didn't have an ambulance parked in the fire station. We ran it on a fire truck, and we did what we did, and we did it very well, I might add. And then we went back to the station. The ambulance would come, they'd take the patient and do their thing, and go on about their business. Um, so what I envisioned was, you get on the fire department to be a firefighter, not to work on an ambulance. And so by, doing the third city service, police, fire, EMS, we're running out of separate stations. We're not part of the fire department. We certainly have a close working relationship with the fire department and the police department as well. But we're our own entity within the city. We have our own budget. We have our own, everything is separate from any other department. Um, emergency management, take that and throw into there is kind of unique in that some of the stuff, for EMS and fire and police, which, would originally go to that department, now goes to emergency management. So it's a little separate entity in and of itself as well. But for us, the sustainable piece to get back to your question is, do we have to make money? We do not. Do we need to break even? Yes, we do. And we will do that very, very soon. Obviously, starting an ambulance service, I don't care if you're a city or, mom and pop, it takes money. And it takes a lot of money these days. And so, but we're on a plan, and it's a good plan. We worked lots and lots of hours on it. And our city leadership is amazing. Our council and mayor is amazing. They've supported this from the very beginning. And so we're doing it, and we're doing it right. We're not kind of halfway in this, or we'll scrimp here to do this over here. No, we're doing it right. So pretty proud of that.
That makes my heart sing to see you smile, to know that there are people that have been looking at this opportunity for a number of years. It wasn't a knee-jerk reaction. It wasn't an anti-this or anti-that in an organization. It was really a thoughtful process from everything that I'm hearing from you and can kind of see is I've evaluated, this potential until July 1st. It was just all potential energy, and then it came to fruition. And when things like that come to fruition, you obviously know humans create energy and friction. And you as a leader have developed a core of clear as kind, I think, this is what I'm portraying of you. You will be rather blunt and articulate, yet clear in order to get the message across. And to me, that's kind. That's a leader that most of us would want to strive to work for, because we don't have to then worry about misunderstanding. What was that person saying? What was that leader, director, manager telling me? They told you, and that was clear. And to me, that is kind leadership, kind management. So I hear you, and I've seen you do that. When we actually did, I worked for you many, many years ago in an organization, and I saw clear as kind as a measure of your leadership. And that's accountability. And all the guests in the last 4.5, 5 years, Mr. Fowler, have had accountability as their number one tenet. And you haven't said that yet, but that's, I know, what drives you. Holding yourself accountable and holding other people accountable. Because you are a collaborator and you've brought people in and you talk about favorably the team that you're working with, those are strong mentoring examples. And I want you, as a leader that's held numerous leadership positions from my research of you, talk a little bit about what leadership means to you and why what I've seen, other people have obviously seen and given you opportunities. Because I think opportunities are important. And when people are given them, we have one or two ways to go with them. And you've typically taken them to the point where there's been a confluence of successes, even in the midst of concerns and issues. So as a leader, kind of talk to me about your style, why it's been, from what I've read and heard, and I know you did another podcast, why it's been positive and why you hold accountability so dear and near to you.
Eric, it's number one, you're spot on with the holding myself accountable. If I can't do that, if I can't be accountable to you, to my city leaders, to my taxpayers, but really to me personally, I can't go out and have an expectation of you that I would not expect of myself. And I've always been that way. I mean, from long before I was ever in leadership. I can't promote something that I think you should be doing, or that I think you should be doing, or you should be doing, unless I'm willing to do it myself. And that's been a huge thing for me. Another piece to it is just relationship building. the reason the city of El Reno reached out to me was the private that was here previously. I actually um, had a hand in bringing that uh, operation to the city of El Reno. I worked for that organization at the time, and so I knew the key players in El Reno, and they knew me, and so that's how we kind of came to be. One of the big things is if I say I'm going to do it, I do it. Um, I might prove myself wrong, or somebody might prove me wrong, that maybe I should have done it a different way. But if I say I'm going to do something, I do it and I follow through with it. But as far as leadership goes, as far as me being a leader to other human beings, um, this is the best way that I can put it, and I've believed this for a long, long time, and I'm sure it's nothing that other leaders throughout the country don't also agree with. But it kind of sums it all up. We in upper management, if you will, um, we've got a supervisor opening, and Eric is an amazing paramedic, and he keeps his truck clean. His paperwork is spot on. His patient care is amazing, and he would make an awesome supervisor because of those things, right? That's what most people would think. And so I, as a leader, dub the Eric supervisor, and I throw you the keys and say, "Go get after it, big boy." And
Sorry.
you might go out there and for a couple of weeks flounder long enough to do good, but something is going to happen that is going to aggravate upper management. And we're like, well, he screwed up, and what in the world was he thinking? Whose fault is that? Is that your fault, or is that my fault as a leader? Because I just threw you the keys and said, go get after it because you're a great paramedic, because your truck's always clean, because your patient care is spot on, because your paperwork is amazing. Good paramedic does not equal good leader. You have to teach, future leaders how to become leaders. And so that's always been kind of my style is if I'm in a room full of EMTs and paramedics, there might be two of them that someday wind up in a leadership role. But all of you should have the same opportunity, should have the same respect from me. Um, Even though I can look at you and probably know that, 5 years from now, you might be doing something totally different. You may not even be an EMS based on your attitude, based on your, whatever the case is. But when I'm in front of a group of people, number one, they're looking at me for guidance, typically. But number two, um, I want to be something that they want to emulate because I'm building the leaders of tomorrow. I'm not going to be around forever, and we're going to discuss that. That's come painfully close for me. I'm not going to be around forever, so I like to go from within. Um, and I'll do that every opportunity I can because you put 50 people in a room, there's going to be 10 good leaders in that room, if not more. So that's what I've always kind of looked at it as is I'm not a boss. Anybody can be a boss. Anybody can sit behind a desk and point fingers and tell people to do this and do that. But unless I'm willing to zip up my boots and go out there and get my hands dirty and do the things that I'm expecting other people to go do, um, that's a leader. That's the definition of a leader, in my opinion. It's my method of leadership has been successful for me. It may not work for everybody, but I've done pretty well. And it for whatever reason got somebody to pick up the phone and call me and say, "Hey, what do you think about these ideas that we're having in the city of El Reno?" And so here I sit talking with you.
I hear so many things about intentionality and reflection and that self-reflection, which are all key tenets of what a leader, I believe, is and should do, to know that there's always opportunities to grow. And you hit the nail on the head from my perspective, that there have been times that you have been proven, quote unquote, wrong, and then made amends or made adjustments. And to not take it inherently personally, even though we all are human beings and we're gonna feel our own kind of feelings, but to work through them as quickly as possible, because the responsibility as a profession or a position of within a profession to not be tied down to the guilt and the shame or the disappointment or the jealousy of somebody else did it a little bit better than I did and they proved me wrong. And then instead of celebrating it, we sulk. You have not been a sulker to my observation. And this is where the story pivots, where leadership and the rubber meets the road.
Leadership and the rubber.
I know because I heard it directly from you that you were in the fight for your life. And with that being said, you were also in the last 5, 6, 7, 8 months starting this operation with purchasing and equipment and hiring a director that was interim at the time or was a supervisor that has been elevated subsequently to a director position, all the while knowing that you had days to weeks to months to live. And I want to thank you because the palpable impact of that alone, and you and I both working in this field and industry for the 30 plus years that we have, or 40 in your case, have seen death. We have felt death as empaths in people. And you were literally staring down the potential end of your life before it should have been taken. How I'm humbly saying, Ed, and I'll just call you Ed as opposed to Mr. Fowler in this case, since we're getting ready to talk about you facing the fight of your life, what it took in collaboration of medical teams, the relationship with your wife, and the people that you trust, which is the same thing that you did, in my humble opinion and estimation, to build the relationship that you have to be the City of El Reno Emergency Management Director. You also had to do for yourself, and you had to compile a team, and sometimes didn't have any say-so in how that team was compiled, but you had to develop the things that put you in a position to be successful, even if you were not going to survive. And I hate saying that because it hurts to feel that, and I know you have feelings about that, so I'm going to give it to you.
You know, I mean, you said it all right there. I don't have to say anything. No. Yeah, you know, we've been working on this for quite some time. And just when things were kind of starting to gel, and you know, you've got a firm start date, and you know you're going to start hiring people, and you know you've got ambulances coming in, and you've got equipment coming in, and then all of a sudden one day you don't feel good, and so you stay home from work, and then the very next day you feel even worse. So you call your buddy and say, who's a paramedic, and say, hey, come over, I need you to look at me and check me out here because something's not right. And you wind up going to the ER and get told within 6 hours that you've got a kind of a major issue going on. In my case, I don't mind sharing it. My liver was dead. You know, there's the automatic assumption of you know, what causes liver disease and damage and all that, and people assume a little too much sometimes. I'll just leave that at that. But I had a number of things going against me. But I had a doctor look at me literally in the ER and say, we're transferring you to the hospital that has the Transplant Institute tonight. And my wife was in Arizona. We have a home there, and she was there. And I called her and I said, you might want to be sitting down for this. And so, you know, I wound up in the hospital that first go around for almost a week. And the whole time I was there, while sick, I wasn't like crazy sick yet, but I didn't feel good, to be clear. But all of a sudden now my mind is spinning on, okay, I've got this ambulance service we're getting ready to start up. I wasn't real sure where this newfound health issue was really headed yet. Um, but I knew that there were some decisions that were going to have to be made quickly to maintain the forward trajectory that we had going on here, but also to be able to deal with, what potentially was coming. Little did I know. But as time went, I did um, appoint a manager who has done a great job. I'm also going to, give kudos to the EMTs and paramedics. I had to sit down. I think they knew something was wrong, although I hadn't come out and made public what was going on with me health wise. Eventually, I did sit down and let everybody know, here's what's happening. And by this time, I was pretty far into being sick. Um, but we had to keep that ball rolling. There was more than the 12 faces looking at me as I was telling them what's going on. We're now a couple $1 million into this project of getting started. We've got a population of almost 20,000 people that know this is coming. That you know we still got to keep going. Um, but as things, we did hit our target date. We did open on July 1st, and we did start running calls and providing amazing patient care. My phone is constantly blowing up about the quality of EMT and paramedic that we have working for us, and the patient care they provide. But at some point, it got to where I had to kind of focus on uh, my own sustainability, if you will, because it was little did I know I was going down a path of not coming back. I was eventually on the transplant list. Um, I won't go into a lot of detail, but my blood type is B positive, and the list for B uh, uh, people needing a liver is much shorter than other lists. So they it kind of was didn't make much sense to me at the time, but once I explained it, but the chances of getting a liver if you're B blood is a lot quicker than if you're, not B blood because there's fewer people with B blood. And so I was on the list, well, from the day that I was diagnosed to the day that I got a liver was about 4.5 months, which is a miracle in and of itself. But I can tell you that the last about 2 weeks prior to me getting the liver, um, I was in the hospital more than I wasn't. And the doctors, God love them, they had said, we're not going to let you die. We'll put you on a vent, or we can put you on ECMO. We can do all these things to keep your body alive, waiting on a liver. And little did I know I was to that point. Um, I'd been in the hospital and I was tired of being in the hospital. I just wanted to go home. And I had pretty well just convinced myself that, the end is here and I don't want to die in the hospital. I want to go home. And so I talked with the doctors and I think they, in the back of their minds, they're still saying, well, we've still got vent, we've still got ECMO. And I said, guys, just let me go home. And so they did. I went home on a Thursday. And then that Friday at about noon-ish, I got a phone call that said, we need you to be here at 4 o'clock tomorrow morning, which is Saturday morning, August 9th. We need you to be here at 4. We found a liver. And uh, said, okay. And so it was all my wife could do to get me to the car and into the car. That's how far gone I was. Got to the hospital and got checked in and sure enough, I got a liver. And that was well, it was 7 weeks ago this past Saturday. Um, I could sit here and talk about it for all day long. The just the difference it's made in me, the mindset change in me. Um, I've always kind of been this macho, tough guy, nothing's ever going to do anything to me kind of mentality. And I learned the hard way that we're all vulnerable to different things, and I'm no exception. Um, but it's been an interesting time because the doctors told me, they said, we expect you to progress quicker than the normal liver recipient, because they said outside of your liver, you're perfectly healthy. And so I have not disappointed them. I spent 10 days in the hospital, was out walking, I think I started with about 2/10 of a mile just going around the neighborhood. And then I just add and add and add. And they had told me early on, don't plan on even remotely thinking about going back to work or driving for at least 2 months. Well, I'm at week 7, and I think I'm at my third week of back to work in some form or fashion. Still not full time back yet, but I'm driving, having an impact on what we started back several months back. Um, but I got to tell you, Eric, it's um, for 40 years, I've had an impact on this field by being the provider, or the leader, or um, the responder. I've never been necessarily on the. I mean, my retirement from the fire department was because of an injury, but not anything quite as daunting as what I've been through the last you know well, since April. Um, and it gives a person a whole new perspective on, um, at least for me, um, the people that are outside those doors that need us and that rely on us. Um, it's cliche. Everybody said it, but that's their worst day. Well, I know what that's like now, because I've had my worst day, and I almost didn't come back from it. So I can harp on it. I can talk about it all day. Um, Doctors were amazing. My employer was amazing. Um, uh, I obviously there's a lot of concerns with being out for that period of time, and that just from the top down, work wise, everybody's just been super supportive. My wife, I can't say enough about her. I mean, she still lives in Arizona. She was in the process of getting everything, kind of the house and all that squared away to get here, to move here when all this happened. So, she's dropped 90 days of her life when she was supposed to be getting prepared to move, and just been here literally taking care of me and working remote. Um, so it's just, I don't know. It, I'm very blessed. I'm very blessed, and I will share that for the rest of my life to anybody that wants to hear it. Just how blessed I am, because I just can't imagine. Number one, I'll never want to go through that again. But number two, I had so much more to do, I felt like, and as it was getting to what I thought was the end, all I could do was reflect on what I didn't accomplish. What more is there that I could have done to make somebody's life better? Um, whether it be an employee or a group of employees or a city or a child, one of my children, or my wife or a total stranger, just what did I miss? And I feel like I've got a new lease on being able to accomplish those things. It's amazing what you think about when you're cooped up in a hospital bed and can do nothing else other than think. So,
Thank you for your humility, for your grace, for your transparency, for making yourself available to that story for the listeners and the followers out there. And there are a lot that have had their own individual struggles. And maybe as they compare, and I always say that, the comparison is a thing that we shouldn't do, because your whatever is your whatever, and it's as daunting and as difficult or as hard emotionally, spiritually, physically as it is. Facing life or death is also something that ultimately we all come to. Yours would have come at a rather premature time. And I know hearing you, the words that you say, blessing, and why you're using those words, how that impacts me. In the next, several minutes before we close, one thing, well, many things that you said struck me. And in this one here, we still have to keep going. When we're eulogizing somebody, the first thing that we say is they would want us to keep going. In law enforcement or fire and EMS, I'll take it from here. We'll take it from here, brother. We'll take it from here, sister. Well done, thou good and faithful servant, more from the religious side. But we say that when we ring the bell at a firefighter's funeral, when we hear the final tones at a paramedic's funeral. And for whatever reason, you weren't ready. The universe, God that you and I believe in wasn't ready. We still have to keep going. And so that's the mantra that we would have done if we had to eulogize you. Ed would have still wanted us to go and keep going, right? When we run into hardships and pitfalls, and our first answer is to sling arrows, to be negative, to throw things back at the person that brought up an issue or a concern. And I know that this is trivial in your life now, and yet still a responsibility of yours in your position. And thank you and God bless you for this opportunity to hear your story at such a bigger level that's going to go out there. What would you say, and I'm going to give you the last several minutes, to the people that say, you know what, I'm not strong enough to keep going. I don't know how to keep going. I don't know why I should keep going. What would you tell them?
Well, I was there. And that's just, I can't be any more honest than that. I was there. I did not know how to keep going. There's no book, there's no manual on, knowing that the end is right in front of you. I knew it. As sure as you and I are sitting here, I just knew it. And for whatever reason, like you said, God, the universe, something intervened and said my time wasn't finished yet. I think you made a statement. I kind of want to address that a little bit. You said, people slinging arrows and doing this and doing that, and it seems trivial. Maybe in the past to me it did seem trivial. It doesn't now. Why are those things happening? We talk about EMS being a family, but yet we spend so much time, it seems like, not being a family, a dysfunctional family at best. And so, the keeping going, the keeping trudging. And I alluded to it earlier about, I didn't have anything to do but lay in bed and think. I would tell people that we all still have something to give. We do. I feel like I've got a lot left in me. So if you're hitting that wall, if you're hitting that I give up. Don't, because you don't know that person that's having that arrow slung at them. You don't know what kind of an impact you might have on that person. You don't know what kind of impact you might have on the person slinging the arrows. We all need to strive. We're never going to be perfect. I'm never going to be perfect. I strive for it, but I fully well know that I'm going to fail. I know it, and I'll probably fail at something today. But the one thing that I've always said, and I think I was to that point, and I know we're getting close to wrapping up here, but the one thing I've always said is the day that I stop learning, it's time for me to find something else to do. The day that I think I know everything there is to know about EMS, it's time to move on and let somebody else come in, because I learn something every day. I do. It might be something small. It might be how somebody polished their boots and I like how they look. It might be something trivial. But try to learn something every day. Try to focus on one thing that you can do positive that somebody may recognize, somebody may not. And I'm not talking about it as a leader. I'm talking about it as a human. just as a human being. We in our field, we have a lot of contact with human beings, sometimes at their worst possible moment. Shine a little bit for them, you know? That's what I would tell people is, when you're feeling down, you're feeling, like just I'm done with this. I give up, throw my hands in the air. There is some reason to keep going. I promise you. I'm sitting here right now because that was the mindset I had to have. There's a reason to keep going.
There's a reason to keep going. Ed Fowler, City of El Reno Emergency Manager. I want to thank you so very much for this time, for your availability, for your vulnerability, for your transparency. This is and has been the EMS Improv podcast where we've engaged, where we've been mindful, and we've heard your stories. I'm Eric Chase. We're powered by GEMS. And Ed, as I say at the end of my podcast, may a peace which surpasses all understanding be with you and those that you touch. And thank you for being a light.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Eric Chase with the EMS Improv podcast, where we engage, where we're mindful, and we share or tell our stories. We are powered by GEMS. In consultation with Ed Fowler, the City of El Reno, Oklahoma City Emergency Manager, I want to make the following statement. Subsequent to our podcast, the City of El Reno has suffered a tragic loss, and I want to read a statement from the Oklahoma Fraternal Order of Police, who has had the family's wishes that this be put out there publicly. It is with great sadness that I report on October 24th, 2025 at 6:36 p.m. Sergeant Thomas Duran has passed away. The organ donation process has begun, and we trust that Thomas is being held in the loving arms of his Savior. On behalf of Chief Brown and the entire El Reno Police Department, President Kenan Varner, and the members of the El Reno FOP, Sergeant Duran will be missed and honored for his sacrifice and his bravery. In the days ahead, we celebrate Thomas's life and the way he served those in need. Today, though, we mourn the loss of a father, husband, family member, friend, and brother in blue. We mourn with the family and the community of El Reno. The entire law enforcement and the FOP family mourns the loss of a hero, a man who lived and left this world as he always had, serving sacrificially and giving others the gift of life as was his wish. And Thomas's mantra was save, not soft. Thomas, may you rest in peace. Thank you for your faithful service. Godspeed, brother, and